inside scoop on World League FlingGolf. Tim Durr and Austin Ebersole are taking you behind the scenes to answer the most pressing questions from the community. Welcome to FlingGolf Theory with Showtime.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to FlingGolf Theory with Showtime. As always, I'm your host, Tim Durr, and that guy joining me there is Showtime, Austin Ebersole. What's up, bud?
Oh, what's up, dude? How are you? How was your weekend? How's everything going?
Good. It's been good. Just getting back into the swing of things, you know, after coming back last week from Punta Cana. So it's just been back into it. It's been fun.
Back to reality now.
Yeah, back to reality, back to work, back to that grind. So it's been fun, but I know we got I think it's going to be a big, important episode that we're about to record today. So, I mean, anything
agree.
you want to shout out before that, talk about, you know, anything you've been up to before we dive into this hearty episode?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a big episode because we definitely want to talk about what we discussed on last episode and just clarify some things. But no, huge shout out, I guess, for the big Summit versus Shore showdown this weekend between the Highland Deers and the Titans. It is exciting. I can't freaking wait. I'm so excited that we're going to have such a blend of all these different skill levels playing for one mission, which is to win the trophy at the end of Sunday. But I'm excited. So just want to wish safe travels to the West Virginia folk as you guys come on over. Really looking forward to seeing you guys, grabbing some lunch on Saturday at Taco Rijo, and then having some beers and some Grandpa Mac after our round Saturday. So safe travels, guys. And yeah, let's go Titans.
Awesome, dude. And yeah, quick shout out on that point for people to check out the WLF Unleashed pod. I know you were on there talking a little bit about that on their latest episode. Their next one is going to come out July 7th. It's going to look forward toward PA. It's going to talk about what happens this weekend with the club series. So go check them out. The Harveys do an awesome job over there, really bringing a lot of interest to different parts of the community, great interviews and contacts with people. So quick shout out to those guys as well before we dive into it here. All right. I said it's going to be big. It's going to be, an important episode. And we'll let Austin get settled there. He's at the American Classic. People are coming in. Phones are ringing. We're doing
phones
it live.
Are ringing. I'm trying to get Brooke to get the phone here, and she looked at me with an eye roll. So, like, why are you texting me? I'm like, please just sneak over. But yeah, we're busted here. But anyways, whatever, the phone's there. I apologize if it goes off, guys.
Yeah, no, all good. It just shows that we like to do this live. We don't like to edit it a ton. We want it to be our authentic thoughts. And with that, I think we're ready to kind of dive into a follow-up from our conversation from last episode. I'll just kick it off with there was a lot of discussion. For those of you who are on the FlingGolf players page, you probably saw the comments. If you didn't, you can go check them out. But basically, our discussion about distance and how important it is. It talked a lot about the Masters division as really the focus on it. And I want to say that distance it's a huge factor in our sport. We definitely weren't trying to single out age. And I think the framing of that conversation, it got more focused on the Masters division because our lead into that was talking about Jack staying in the men's division and, kind of that transitioned over to the long throwers in the Masters division. And we said multiple times, we're not trying to make it personal, but it's kind of one of those things where, people say that a lot of times, like, well, I'm not a blank, but, so I understand how it could feel that way a bit of like, it's not personal, but toward, some of the players like, Jeff Harvey, Brian Sanders, Cutter, those guys who we called out. Wasn't intentional to call them out, but understand that they took it that way. So it wasn't meant to be personal. This pod isn't meant to tear people down. We're sorry if the conversation came across that way. Our goal is to build people up, is to express opinions and start conversations on the community. So I think an aspect of the conversation was really valuable. We got a lot of good feedback. We want to keep conversations going from every episode that we have. We're not going to deep dive back into the distance conversation right now, But I think there's value in those discussions, and we definitely want to kind of build on that and keep having more of those in the future. But be respectful and really be inclusive of the community. So I'll kick it over to you, Austin.
Yeah, no, I just want to double down on what you just said, and really just want everybody to know, like, it was never meant to go down the path that it did. We just wanted to talk about how distance really is impacting the sport competitively. And the thing with Jack was, like, I just wanted to also, like, really give him his flowers to start the whole conversation, because Jack is 68. He'll be 69 in September. I am 34. Jack is twice my age, and he's still keeping up with me and being competitive and getting top fives. So it was more, for me personally, it was more about just making sure that, like, we just all see that, like, Jack Bovich is just awesome. And I know he's an outlier and all that, but I just wanted to make sure that we celebrated Jack for showing the age is really just a number. So, but yeah, distance is impacting. I think, we can be honest. If you look at the rankings, like, even the women's division is heavily impacted by distances. I think the top 3 women right now are the 3 longest throwers who are committed to the tour. We saw what happened when Krista was a part of the tour when she was committed. Like, 170 that's going to put you pretty dang close when the rest of the competition's going 90, 100 yards. So it definitely wasn't focused on targeting anybody. I'm sorry that it went that way as well. But we just wanted to let you guys know that distance really is impacting our game, and age is not the determining factor on how far one could throw the ball. So we just wanted to make sure we get that across today, and apologize for anybody that we may have upset with that. But all good intentions, and I think we're gonna have a great episode today.
Yeah, definitely. We have a ton of great stuff. And another point kind of within that distance conversation, it was really about retention. It was about saying, hey, how can we make our sport as competitive and as enjoyable as possible in that, the professional tier that we have currently, and so I think finding ways to retain people, finding ways to keep people engaged is really what was at the heart of a lot of that conversation of trying to theorize, hey, would a tiered handicap system be a better move, where it's based on score and performance, and maybe distance and age, play a small role as well. But, maybe there's some type of way to create something there that right sizes people in tiers with who they're competitive against. But yeah, none of that was meant to say what is happening now is wrong, or anybody who is playing in a division that they qualify for is doing anything wrong. That is it's kudos to all the players who are dominant or very successful in their divisions, no matter age, gender, whatever. We definitely want to shout them out. And with that, I think we can move into the meat and potatoes of the episode, which is really focused on attendance. So I took a lot of numbers from the FlingGolf, World League FlingGolf stats site, and just broke down who has come to events, where they live, how many people come back, how many people come to one event. And so we have a lot of slides that we're gonna throw graphics up on here left and right today. But we really want it to be a productive conversation. The goal isn't to speak negatively on the sport. It's also not to speak, with rose-tinted glasses. It's to really be honest and accurate about some good things and some bad trends of where the professional side of the sport is heading. So with that, let's kick it off to our first graphic. I'll set the table here real quick, Austin. I'll let you kind of jump in. So this is very high level. And to preface, it is only looking at what now would be considered a Pro Series event. So in previous years, it wasn't deemed Pro Series, but it was an event that you could gain points towards your WLF ranking by attending. So, some smaller events last year, like Richmond and New York, they counted as Pro Series events. But you look at like No Guts, No Glory, a couple years ago, that wasn't deemed a pro level event. The events that just happened over the past couple weeks in New Mexico and in North Carolina, those aren't being counted in these stats either. So those are kind of a different thing. Same with like the Texas Regional Series, not being counted into these numbers. So with that said, you can see we've had 228 players come and attend an event. And, that's I think a little lower than we both thought it would be, looking at 20 plus events over about 5 years. But it's also, it's not nothing. It's, we have 228 players who've come out. 97 of them have been one event attendees. So that comes out at about 42% of our players are only coming to one event. And we'll dive in deeper to why we think that's happening. But a worthy note. And then we kind of look at under 5 events is about 160 of those players. And then you see we really have a focus group of 51 people who have come to 10 or more events. So that's the dedicated core of the community, is really a solid 50 to 60 people who are coming out to events as much as they can.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was definitely shocked to see that we have only had 228 players in the 4.5 years of the sport now. And it was definitely staggering also seeing the 97 one-time event attendees. But it makes sense whenever we dive into that, because we've had isolated tournaments like out in San Diego and in Colorado and down in Florida, and even out in Missouri, where a lot of people that are from Oklahoma and Texas and surrounding states, that was probably the only event they could come to. And many factors. Some people just maybe don't like the fly and they don't know where they stand, so they just were curious to try it. Maybe they realize that weekend they aren't as competitive as they hoped they would be, or again, just life happens, which we totally understand. But we've always talked, there seems to be about around 50 like people who are very committed to the tour. And that's not a slight on anybody either. Commitment, I just mean like they're just going. They're going to the events. They love what they love what it is. They're investing their leisure money into this hobby, because that's really what it is at this point. And it's I'm not surprised to see that number around 50, just because we always kind of just guessed that was the number anyways. But yeah, the numbers are always good to see. And I think we definitely can dive into these and why they are how they are.
Yeah, and you set the table there. I'll go over to our state breakdown, and you really set the table with talking about some of those events that saw one-off players. So we say, hey, you have 97 one-off players, and then we look at which states have players across the board, and everybody knows that Mid-Atlantic region, Delaware, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, that's pretty much 50% of our player base who come to competitive events live in that area. Just the top 3 states, that's 90 players. You throw in West Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland has a couple players now, and you look and it's like, all right, there's 115 out of 228 who are really congregated in that area. And knowing that we host more events in that area, you can kind of say 3-ish of the 4 Pro Series events are in that area. South Carolina a little outside of it, but it's been 2 to 3 events every single year happening in that Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia triangle. The part that people might be like, wow, I didn't realize that many people from California played. It's really an ode to regionalization and localization of the sport, where of those 23 people from California, only 8 of them have traveled outside of the state for an event. So 15 of them are staying local. They're going to the San Diego Open every year, or they've gone to it at least once. And that is great for localization and regionalizing the sport. And I think that, and Missouri as well, really it's kind of Titus and Obi are the only Missouri people who are traveling outside for the tour. The rest of those guys are, at this point, they're kind of one event guys who came to the Midwest Open last year, and they'll probably come again this year. And it kind of just shows with that level that you're having players play in their local area. A majority of them are. It's about 40% of our player base from the analysis that we did play only in their local region. So maybe it's not just direct state, but it's hey, I'll travel to Delaware and Pennsylvania because it's a 4-hour drive from Virginia. but I'm not going to travel to Florida or San Diego or wherever else. And then one more thing before I get your input on this, Austin, is all 10 of these states have hosted an event. So it really shows in kind of a field of dreams way, like if you build it, they will come. And we've had, if we have an event in that state, we're getting more players from that state showing up to the event.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I think the one thing that's going to potentially limit that right now in the current setup is the Pro Series is only going to have 4 events. And as you can tell, there's 10 states on this list, so not all the mouths are going to be fed. So it really comes down to what we're going to talk about later about creating things locally yourselves and starting leagues and doing other types of things to help grow the game. And the truth of the situation is, I think because there's only, 4 Pro Series events, I think having a proof of concept by showing like, hey, John, hey, Alex, like we have all these people playing, like they're ready to be here. And I know for a fact that John will never shy away from having an event at a location if he knows that there's 20, 25 people in that state that are for sure going to be there, because you already have the other 50 people, like we saw on the last slide, that 40 of them are going to be there. 80% of that is going to be there. So now you have a field size of 60, 65 people. And that's about where we've been the last couple of years. So, but yeah, guys, if you build it, they will come. You just got to spark everything up. And it kind of leads into the club series that we've done this weekend. I'm not at all surprised to see that the inaugural club series season is Delaware, Pennsylvania, and a hybrid of West Virginia and Virginia. And I want to put a little exclamation on that. Yeah, it's the West Virginia Highland Deers, but they are like 10 minutes away from the Virginia border. They're like 30 minutes away from the PA border. So it's really such a cluster right there in the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia area. And that's why they have such a huge roster, though, and they're able to pull people like an Adam Copeland and a Michael Alexiou and Leslie Harlacher and a Carla Christian, because they're all within an hour radius of West Virginia. So West Virginia's low individually, but when you really center it with Virginia as a whole, it's definitely up there too. So, but yeah, man, no, these are great numbers, and I think it's fantastic that when an event is local, somebody comes out. Like I love that California had 15 people who, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, because that's what you hope for. You hope when you host an event that local players who want to dabble in it, get their toes wet, well, so to say, would come on out, and you probably hope at least 50% of that travels, though, instead of 33% where they're at now. So if we could get 2 to 4 more people out of that list willing to make some trips, I think that'd be awesome. And that's how we slowly build the ranks on the Pro Tour. But yeah, this is great stuff, dude. I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, a ton of information here, and we're not gonna make this feel like a PowerPoint presentation where we dive into every number, but the average events on there, just to quickly shout that out before we flip to our state map. I mean, you can see like the players from West Virginia, they're all dedicated, die hard. I mean, the average person in West Virginia is attending almost 9 events so far. So like if you're a player from that state, you've been to a ton of events. And you look kind of contrary, South Carolina hosting its first event a couple months ago, they got that influx of new players who came, and so their average is only 2 events, because for a lot of them, the Low Country Open was their first entry to professional fling golf. And then some of them made the trek up to Delaware after, some didn't. A couple, John Fernandez lived in South Carolina for a while. We counted him in Georgia since he's moved, but he got some people into the sport, in that area that have played more than 2 events. But it really shows that you host an event in an area, you draw some interest, you bring out players. And our map that I'm going to flip over to now, I think really, helps to tell that same story. You see where our biggest pockets of players are. It is that Mid-Atlantic region. It's spread into North and South Carolina a little bit. And I think, kind of as you said, Austin, Florida is an interesting state to look at, because a healthy portion of the Floridians playing fling golf are the main events who moved down there recently, are the Stainbrooks. There's a lot of people who have moved to Florida, which it's a great retirement area. It's a great golf area. And so I think as those numbers grow in a state like Florida, it makes that a more feasible market for more events to take place. And we went down there twice for the Treasure Coast Open, so that helped draw 2 or 3 local people each time we went there as well. So you see the state map. It's not meant to look like a political presidential election map, but it does look a little bit like that with the coloring. But yeah, you can see the pockets that have had players. Some areas haven't. And I think it's a pretty cool view to just kind of see where the hotbeds of players are at.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I chuckle when I look at Mississippi, because we all know that is Sean all by himself. So SVL, shout out to you, brother. But yeah, no, I think this shows, and you can make an argument like, okay, well, yeah, the Mid-Atlantic has the most dark red because that's where most of the events are. But even if we would have done this map in 2023, it would have still looked the same. And at the end of the day, we talked about it yesterday. Every sport starts in a region and it grows outwards. And one thing that FlingGolf did early on is we tried to make it a whole nationwide thing. I mean, because guys, like the sport's only been around like 13 years or so. So like we're so freaking young. And it took pickleball like 50 years to get from the Pacific Northwest all the way to the East Coast. So like we're moving at like a crazy speed here to make this happen. But I think, the Mid-Atlantic is obviously, the heart of FlingGolf right now. But it doesn't mean that the California, the Missouris, the Floridas, and everybody else in between, like, you guys aren't that far off. I mean, you saw the numbers there. California has a staggering 23 people that have played. And I think if we can just figure out a way to maybe get some Nevada, Utah, and Arizona people going, there can be a lot more local centralized play right there for all those people so that they aren't just doing one event. They can drive to Nevada, or they can take a short 2-hour flight to Arizona. Because I absolutely understand the cost of everything, and flying coast to coast is not cheap. It takes up a lot of time. But yeah, the Mid-Atlantic is definitely where a lot of us are at. And there's a lot of hotbeds too. When you think about the ACGCs, the Cape and Springs, it's such a tight cluster of people that really, really boost that. So my goal is to hopefully have Delaware expand up north and try to get some more northern players, more northern clubs, as well as the eastern shore of Maryland. But yeah, it's a great state, or great map. It's a good example of what's going on. And the only thing that stands out to me is like, man, we really got to do something in like the Dakotas and Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like we need, like somebody can sign up and play in Missouri, and they can be from South Dakota, and they can officially be the top ranked player in South Dakota by showing up, the best player. So take advantage of that, guys. Get on out and play. But no, dude, great map again.
Yeah, and I think off of that view of that map, you see like one thing that the numbers are a little lower for something like Texas right now, because we're not counting those regional events. And so, there's probably 5 to 10 to 15 players who have turned out to the events that Delwyn's put on, have got together, even just kind of casually with somebody like Hooter, who's just meeting up with guys who live within a couple hours and going out and playing. And, so those numbers, I think Texas right now shows like 6 people have played, but it's really, it's 50, it's probably close to that 15 or 20 range as well, which is really showing, that they have potential, they have an opportunity for growth. And, those are numbers that we definitely want to add. Mm-hmm. But I think looking at all of that, I'm going to throw kind of a big picture idea to you, Austin, of let's say I'm commissioner of the sport for 2027. Here would probably be what I would consider doing with the sport. And then I'll let you chime back in and tell me if you think I'm crazy left field or where I'm landing at on this. So my real statement is shift everything regional and local as much as possible. And so it's not saying like just completely throw away a national pro tour, but it's saying make the bulk of the events really focused in regional pockets. And with that, it's almost more of I think a players association ideology than a pro league for maybe a couple years. And it does like what you're doing in Delaware, what you guys are doing with the club series. It's opening up opportunities for, you to run a league out of American Classic that plays once a month over the summer, or every 2 weeks, or whatever cadence makes sense for you. And then it sets up really kind of a board of directors in each region. So, in the Mid-Atlantic region or the Northeast region, maybe it's you, Aquajon, and Zach are kind of the three board members. And you guys are in control of planning your events, what you do locally, what you do on a regional level. And it opens the door to have more events. I think the model that I would do, it shifts to an at cost model. So right now, I think a big barrier of entry for some people is the registration fees. It's $400 for, a standard Pro Series event if you're competing in the whole weekend, doubles, individual, everything. This would be more of a model saying, hey, the course charges us $55 for a round. We're going to play 2 days. It's $110. And then you probably have some a la carte options of, hey, we're going to provide lunch. We're going to do a swag bag. We're going to do an optional prize pot where you can throw in, an extra $50 or whatever that goes toward that, range balls, practice rounds, kind of whatever add-ons make sense. But it's really about reducing the cost structure, localizing things, reducing the travel time. And then you have an opportunity for probably 1 or 2 national events that serve as the big get together for everybody. Maybe one's a kickoff event at the beginning of the year, and then one's kind of a championship finale where I think the only criteria across the board for the regions would be some type of ranking system, some type of way to just determine performance so that when we get to that national stage, we can kind of analyze people from different divisions who maybe didn't get to play against each other but once or twice the whole year. We can kind of formulate that. But I think what it does is it draws people in the local regions because it says, hey, we have 15 players in California they're showing up to a California event. And we have, a dozen in Missouri probably that are showing up to that. Texas has, a dozen. North Carolina, we have some more people who have maybe come to one event. They came to Kerr Lake, but they're not really traveling a ton beyond that. And so if we can build those pockets up and say, hey, everybody, at the end of the year, we're going to have this big championship national event, then we could have 150 people coming to that event because we have each pocket with 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 100. You look at that Mid-Atlantic region, you have 90 players. Now they're not all active, but there's 90 players in just that little 3-state triangle who have participated. And, I think you create an option there with that to really just build a whole infrastructure that is regionalized with a kind of national cherry on top that doesn't force people into traveling to 4 events as much because, anybody outside of this little Mid-Atlantic pocket, they probably have an extra, $400 to $600 per event that they have to spend on a flight, on a rental car, on whatever. And we kind of get some discounts here because an event in Delaware, you get a home game. You're sleeping in your bed at night. And same with, Pennsylvania for those guys, or Cape and Springs or Massanutten, for parts of the community who are close by.
Yeah, no, and listen, I agree with you. We were talking about this before we got on yesterday, and many times before. I really feel like regionalizing. I don't. We're not restricting it, but what we're saying is having more regional opportunities, like they're doing in Texas, like we're doing with the Club Series, is going to help people get more time to play, more exposure, and it's going to get new people into it. So yeah, to me, a perfect world. Now listen, I love the Pro Tour. Obviously, from the success I've had to the memories and everything that has been so amazing about it. Obviously, I don't want that to go anywhere. But I do think maybe a perfect scenario for me, mapping out what would I want my FlingGolf commitment to be for a year. It would probably be just three pro events. It'd be a season kickoff. It'd be a mid-season tournament, because the truth is the July events are always successful because there's a lot of people who have time in July to go to events. And then the third event would be the end of year championship. So I think it's kick off the season, create opportunities like USA play-in spots and things like that. ESPN coverage, that can be the first event. The second event is, hey, we're halfway through the year. Let's let everybody test their abilities against one another. And then the end of the year is let's crown some champions and have a final ceremony and award celebration and really just enjoy what we all did. So I think 3 events would be perfect because we all can commit to them. And then I would love to have 5 to 10 Delaware, Maryland, Virginia events that I can all go to. And I have probably 8 golf courses in Delaware alone. The Summerfields have a course in Maryland. Craig Fletcher has Captain's Cove down in the Virginia Peninsula. They all want to host something, but I can't right now organize a local league that's going to take us beyond ACGC to all these other courses because I'm committed to 4 Pro Series events, a Potomac Highlands doubles, a week for Britain's Cup. And that's not even including all the other regionals that I would have loved to go to. I would have loved to have gone to Car Lake and New Mexico, but I don't have the time, the funds to be able to stretch myself that thin. But that would be a perfect thing for me, would be like 3 major pro events and then, have a 4 to 8 local stop thing where we play ACGC in May, we play Captain's Cove in June, we play, Garrison's Lake and like something like that, so that I'm staying local. And like you said, I'm sleeping in my own bed. I can drive up, it's an hour, 2 hours away. I can drive up, drive back. That would be a perfect world for me, but I definitely want to not lose the Pro Series because I love it. It's a great way to be able to see everybody. We've made so many friends over the years. But I definitely think from, a long-term standpoint, having top players and having that platform for us to be able to showcase our talents and grow the sport is important. But I don't want people to think that regional stuff's not important because it really is. If we want this thing to sustain itself and grow over time, we just need more local opportunities, and the numbers are showing that. So that's where I'm at.
No, and I mean, I think that's fair, and I think everybody probably has a different happy medium in that range. But I think, like you said, the more that we can regionalize and localize, it shows that that is the pathway to gain more numbers. We look at, I think, a majority of those 97 one-time attendees. I don't know for sure, but just kind of looking at what event they attended and where they live, you're like probably half of them at least attended because of convenience, because it was close by. But I think if you give them 3 or 4 more opportunities to attend close by, maybe they get hooked then, or then they have some incentive. They make some closer friends, where you can kind of sneak your way in and out of one event if you don't really know anybody in the community heading into it. You can show up not knowing anybody. You play with your foursome. Hey, I met one guy. He was pretty nice. Maybe you stay in contact, but then he lives 4 states away, and you're just like, okay, cool. I'm back to playing by myself, or I'm not really going to stick with it. Where when we build those regional bases, as you have done so well in Delaware, as Hooter and Dell are doing right now in Texas, as the Harders are doing in Missouri, Jake and Rosie in California. I mean, we have so many great ambassadors who are building communities, but it's understanding how do we get those communities to be more competitive, to be more than kind of filler in the field for a one-off event where 20 of us travel to California and they have 20 more show up who, that's their one time a year that they play competitively. I think that's the way to do it, is to make it regional. And I think you can achieve a pro tour existing through some of those regional stops where maybe the ACGC event that is kind of deemed as hey, it's a big regional event, also is said hey, this is going to be a pro tour stop as well. So we would love for the whole community to try to get here. And then, in July, we find kind of what that next location is. And then at the end of the year as well. I think another thing that would add value, and this is definitely thinking more for our non-Mid-Atlantic players, is if we could find ways to find courses, especially if we're doing 1 or 2 kind of true featured pro events, is to find those courses in major hubs. I mean, because when you look at the people who have to travel and fly in, basically all of the events this year that are on the East Coast are putting them 2 hours away from an airport. I mean, people love coming to Delaware, but I've heard the bickering of I got to fly into Philly and rent a car and drive 2 hours, or I have to go to Baltimore, or I have to go to DC, and I mean, and it's kind of going to be the same thing with PA here in a couple of weeks. Is Greencastle's kind of stranded between Baltimore, DC, Pittsburgh's like 3 hours away. So you really have, this pocket where people aren't able to get in, and it's adding an extra day for people who are flying in because they finish their round on Sunday and they can't catch the 7 p.m. flight because they have to drive 2 hours and get through security and stay an extra night at a hotel or something. So I think those views would be a great addition for the people who have to travel far distances. And I understand why we play at the courses we play at. It's because we have people there. We have you guys at the Classic. We have, Carla and those guys in PA. It's why when we went to Western PA, that's where I'm from. That wasn't any more convenient. That's still an hour 15 from the Pittsburgh airport to get up to Spring Valley and those courses. So I think if we can find ways to say, hey, this event is happening in whatever, in Atlanta, and we're right there with that type of setup, provides a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I agree with you. I think it's never going to be perfect with the travel logistics, but it is definitely something we need to account for, especially like you said, yeah, South Carolina, PA, Delaware, not really any convenient airport to fly into, or major airport, I should say, because they all have airports, but it's just we're all coming from so many different places. But yeah, I think the first thing is obviously like what course wants us to be there, and then we really have to figure in the travel logistics. As we potentially someday move towards maybe, like you said, 2. I think 3 is the perfect number. Maybe I don't see how ACGC can't be a part of a national stop. I mean, it's where and that's a whole other conversation, because to me, it's just like WLF started here. It's such a hub, and it's the perfect way to show people what could be done at your local area. So, but maybe that's the one where everybody still has to travel a little bit too. But then, like you said, maybe the next 2 tournaments, we make sure there's an airport, a major airport, within 30 minutes. That way it's not a stressful situation. But yeah, man, it's a lot to take in this episode, but it's all good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, we still have a couple more graphics that we want to get to. I think these ones will talk more kind of historical perspective about where the sport's at, where we've gone, what we can take going forward. But I think keeping that local lens is always a good perspective right now, because that's where it needs to build. Even if it's not a formalized league being built in that area, regional play, getting people in your local area, that's the true way that we're going to grow the sport. Is you get people playing for affordable prices close to home, and then when they do that enough, then they feel compelled to say, hey, let me go travel across country or a couple hours up the road to play in a more competitive event. So let's flip over to our field size view. And I think it kind of makes sense for anybody following the sport. You can see in our first 2 years, you had the women's and masters divisions being formed, and the men were bringing in, 35 people per event. As you see, 2024 was, I think, our most successful growth opportunity, because we had the 5 events, and it was really kind of targeted, and people were able to plan that. Most people attended kind of 4 of the 5, and we had the team overlay, which I think is another great aspect that we should try to find ways to implement back in. And if you're doing regional play, it's an easy option to kind of build your regional team and encourage people to be like, hey, you're my teammate, let's go practice together, let's get better, so that when we play the other team a couple states away, we can have a competitive match against them. But as you see the field sizes, they were trending up last year. And I mean, and John, has said this himself from a commissioner's perspective, that we really kind of over diluted the number of events last year. And so you see the numbers there. They drop into that low 20 range for the men. The women are not even at 10 per an event, and the Masters grew a little bit, but that division, honestly, if you just look at the top 5 most attended events last year, they were closer to 15 people at those events. Then they had a couple that only had like 7 or 8. So I mean, you see the trends, and you see it's kind of like we said earlier. There is about 60 people, 65 people coming to each event, and we know the makeup now. We know the makeup is it's 40 to 50 who are kind of dedicated players who will travel to most events, and then it's a mix of some local people who kind of tune in when they have the opportunity to, whenever it's in their backyard or close enough for them. And I think maintaining is healthy, but I think growth is really the only way to get us to that next level.
Yeah, you don't ever want to see decline, and yeah, like, it is staggering what happened last year. But like we said, it's because there was way too many events, and it just, it's, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, it's a hobby for 99% of us, and 99.9% of us. And it just was too many events. But I'm happy, and I really want to shed some light on to see the men's division get back up to average. I'm happy to see the women's division increase, because I know there's a lot of concern with that division as a whole. But at least seeing it go trending upwards is really good. And that jump by the Masters is just phenomenal. I love that. That means we have a lot more guys who are finding the sport and joining in and having fun. So I expect the Masters division to be the fastest growing one. A lot of those guys, they have more time, they have more resources, they have just availability to be able to go to more events. Because a lot of the men and women, we're all raising families and middle age still, so we got a lot going on. That's life. So the positive for them is they just have a little bit more time to have fun. But I think it's phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if the Masters is up to 25, 30 next year. I'd love to see the men get to the 40 threshold. And I think the women, if we can get back to even the 2024 numbers and get them close to 15, that would be great too. So a lot of work ahead, but that's why we're painting the picture we are today with all of the regionalization stuff, and really trying to encourage people to do more locally so that we can get these numbers up. And yeah, I'm happy we could share it with everybody so they could just see what we have seen.
Yeah, and it's really a good transition. We've touched on this a few times today, but basically, when people get hooked and they come to multiple events, there's just a higher probability that they're going to keep attending. So you look at this graphic and you see all players on the left-hand side. And so that's looking at everybody. That's looking at those 97 people who attended one event, and it's looking at, you and Sam who have gone to 20 plus events. And so you look at that number and you see the average is almost 5 events. So out of the 228 people, the average of them are heading to almost 5 events. But when you look at the median, it tells a little bit more accurate of a story, which is basically saying half of our grouping is only attending 1 to 2 events. And so that's really showing, it's really driving another hook in the regional aspect of it, of saying, hey, half of our community, they'll come out when it's in their backyard. They'll come out to a local event. Now, on the right side, whenever you remove all of those one-time attendees, you kind of see how much people who come to multiple events, even if it's just 2 events, that those numbers really boost a lot. And, that average kicks up to 7.5 events. And that's showing people who have been dedicated for a year or 2 years to the sport, or, as you and some other guys have been there since day one, and keep coming back. And even that median number is now up to 6. So the middle person of that 140 some person subset is coming to 6 events. So it really shows, a lot of opportunity there of, if you get people playing more, they'll want to play more. The sport is so much fun, and it's the reason that in the midst of expenses and anything else, it's why so many of us keep coming back and keep playing again, and want to show up to as much as we can, even though it could be expensive, or it could take us away from family time, or whatever it may be. There's really an appetite there, a great community, a love for playing the sport and being with everybody, that if you can get people out more than once, you can get them ingrained in the community. I think you'll see all of these numbers continue to trend upward.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I don't really need to add much to this other than, yeah, it just shows that if people get hooked, they stay. And that is a huge jump from the 2 to 6 on the median events. And it just shows you that if you give people opportunities, they will play, because they're going to love it. I mean, everyone loves the community. They love the sport. So there's all this love going around, except for the travel for a lot of people. So makes it a little tough. But no, it's right there, guys. If we can get you hooked, if people get hooked, you're definitely all in, and you're going to be coming to a lot more events. And I personally think it's a great way to spend your vacations and leisure time. And it's really cool being able to do it. So yeah, good stuff again, dude.
All right, we have a couple more graphics to go through, and then we'll kind of start wrapping things up for this episode. It has been a long one, but we really think this is valuable information. We want to get the community feedback. We want to have conversations. We want to get discussions on what you think of the numbers, what you think of regionalization. I think the sport is in such an infancy that the more that people talk, the more input and feedback we get, it helps to make informed decisions. It helps from our own level of people hosting events or people who just care about the sport, all the way up to John and Alex and and everybody at New Swarm, to understand, hey, here's what the community is saying, and maybe not verbally saying, but kind of saying with their attendance, saying with what they show up to and where they're willing to travel to. So this view right now, it looks at the unique player trend. So this is saying within that year, how many unique people showed up to play in an event. So you look, first year, 2 events, we had 58 different people come. And the increase from Delaware to Virginia was 22 new people showed up to Virginia who didn't play in Delaware. A couple people that we, didn't show up to Virginia, but overall, we saw that number take a big jump, which makes sense in that first year. But then you kind of look as the years go on, and you see a bit of stagnation and a little bit of a decline happening of new people coming to our events. So 2023, we're getting 10.6 new people per event who are showing up. And in the 5 events, we had almost 100 unique players show up to those events. And I think 2023 and 2024 are a really good comparison, because it was basically the same schedule. It was 5 events. They were, two of them were kind of in different locations, but 3 of them were really the same event happening in the same place. And you see that we had more unique players attend. We had that new player kind of stay around 10 per event. And then we get to last year, and while we had 16 more unique players show up, you kind of want more than that when you have almost double the amount of events that are taking place. And then you look at this year. I think this year's kind of getting back to, once again, we're kind of maintaining. There's not a big growth curve. There's thankfully not a huge decline. I mean, last year was a lot of events, but it looks like we've kind of come back to a healthier balance so far this year. So, I mean, this year, when you go through the next 2 events, we're probably going to be at a little over 100 unique players. Just looking at, we're adding 9 or 10 new players per event. So we'll probably hit like 105, 110 if I had to guess for what the 4 events this year look like. Which, I mean, that'll kind of put it back on track for 2024 as well. So interesting information there from my perspective. What are your thoughts on it, Austin?
Yeah, no, I'm encouraged to see that the numbers are coming back up, to at least get to that average. And if 2026 can mirror 2024, when we both agree that 2024 was the height of everything right now, I think if we can get back to that, it's a great place to get back to. And then hopefully we can set up 2027 to be even more successful than both 24 and 26. But I'm encouraged, and I love seeing the numbers go up. It's good for the sport.
All right. I don't want to damper or kind of dampen that encouragement at all, but I think these last 2 slides, they are a little bit of a reality check, just to kind of where things are overall. And so this next one's looking at really kind of like the churn rate. So it's looking at who has stopped coming to events or who hasn't attended an event in a while. And, there's a lot of, like we said, a lot of it's regionalization. A lot of these numbers that we're looking at who haven't attended a 2026 event are just people who are probably waiting until Missouri happens, or they won't show up this year because San Diego doesn't have a major tour stop. It's probably going to be a regional event. And, so we lose a little bit of that 1-to-1 of going back to the same place. But just to speak to what the slide says, you see that 63.6% number there who haven't attended an event. So that's looking at the 228 players, 145 of them haven't attended an event this year, and 83 unique players have attended an event. And so you look, hey, last year, so we have 67 people who the last time they competed was last year. And then it goes down 35, 27, 16. Those ones make sense. Hey, there's a handful of people who they played in one of the first two events, decided the sport wasn't for them. 2023, you have a couple more. 2024, you have kind of 35 people. And last year, right now, we have 67 who I'm sure, like we said, we'll probably get over 104 unique players this year. And I bet that 2025 number drops by 15 to 20 as people come to PA and Missouri for the final events of the year.
Yeah, no, that's what we can hope for, because that is obviously eye-catching when you see that 67 people have yet to play this year. But like you said, we have the big PA tournament coming up in July, which is always a highly attended event. Every event in July has been good. And then, 2026, obviously, you want to see that number continue to rise as well, because that means that people are showing up and playing. But yeah, guys, I mean, we're always going to have people who maybe they decide this isn't for them, which is absolutely fine. But I think it's definitely good information here to see that, some people are stepping away, and I would love to cut that number in half each of those years. So
yeah, it definitely, and I think that's what I think that's what, like we talked about, regionalization. There's some different opportunities that can help with it. And then finally here we have, this is really just kind of looking at 2025 to paint this picture more of regionalization, I think is really the answer for this discussion. So you look at 2025 exit rates. And so what exit rate means in this terms is basically that was the last event that they attended. So you look at Midwest Open last year, you have 14 players who, whether they attended every event before that or that was their first event, that's the most recent time that they've came out to play with us. And so, the Midwest Open, it has 14 players. And as we said, 8 of them we know are local Missouri people who don't have, who aren't deciding to travel to play in the sport. So they'll probably come out to the Midwest Open again this year and compete in that event. San Diego, the same way. We know that there's really only 7 or 8 of the 24 people in California who are traveling for events. Virginia, it was one of the final events of last year. So, some people just haven't been able to get out. Maybe they had played the sport for a couple of years and decided they needed to take some time off and step away. And then a positive note there, you have, the North Carolina Open that kicked off last year. Only 3 people haven't come back and played in an event who participated in that event. So that really shows you that field was strong. It was people had fun there, and people who attended that event decided to go to another event. And I'm sure there's a benefit from that being the first event of last year, because there's just a ton of opportunities for people to go play in more events, and it happening in the spring, it opened the doors for, hey, if you have time off in the summer, you can go to Delaware or PA or any of the other events that we had throughout last year. So I think that is a positive sentiment, but it shows some of the regionality that we've dealt with in Missouri and San Diego, where those numbers just aren't coming. And I think the other thing that kind of speaks to our retention rate is that 21.6 number. And so what that number means is that of the new players who showed up last year, so 2025 was their first year competing in an event, only 21.6% of them, so I believe it's 11 out of 51 players, have come to an event in 2026. And so, there's 40 people who came to an event last year or multiple events last year and haven't decided to come out this year. And like I said, I bet 20 of that 40 is probably regionalized, but I think there is another set of people who they haven't come back out. And so I think it's trying to understand what led them to only coming to 1 or 2 events and not coming to one of these kickoff events for 2026.
Yeah, no, that's the only thing I'm really going to talk about on this slide is just I hate that we've only gotten 1 out of every 5 people to come back. That's not, that's not the number we want. It's never going to be 100%, but you'd at least like to see that every other person is coming back. And we all have many reasons as to why we wouldn't. But it's definitely eye catching. And yeah, I don't think anybody in any sport would like 20% of anything. Unless it's equity in a multi-million-dollar business. Other than that, 20% is not high enough of anything. So yeah, I'm hopeful we can get those numbers up, and I believe we painted a pretty good picture today. Hopefully, for people to understand, what we think, and hopefully it can help grow the game, and we can increase some numbers and decrease some others.
Yeah, definitely. And for everybody who's stayed along here and watched the whole episode, we appreciate it. We'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts. This one has gone longer today than we usually do, but we felt like, as I was kind of just crunching some data and talking to you and a couple other people in the community, it was like, hey, I think we need to have an episode about this so that we can get feedback, we can have discussion, and the goal isn't to negatively speak on FlingGolf or, negatively speak on people from the community for not attending. It's just to paint a reality. I mean, and Austin and I, we talked about that before coming on today's episode of, hey, I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be falsely positive with, kind of rose tinted glasses either, but I want to be realistic. And these are the numbers, these are the stats. And, we wanted to provide some solutions. And I think regionalization is a huge pathway to get more attendance. And it really comes down to building your community in those local areas, to getting people to come out and play, that as close as you can, and setting up events, encouraging people to participate, building that camaraderie, building that community, I think is a really beneficial way to do that. So I'll let you finish any closing thoughts on this topic, and then we can kind of see where we're going to go with wrapping things up for the episode.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty good, man. I feel like we spoke enough on it. Again, just want to encourage everybody though, like, get out, get active, do FlingGolf Fridays, host clinics, start up leagues, do anything. Anything's possible, and I would love to help you out in any way I can. So please use me as a resource on how to get started, how to get courses involved, and don't hesitate to reach out. But it's going to take all of us guys, and we're stronger as one. So hopefully this helps inspire some people to get out and fight the good fight.
Definitely. So I think I'm going to hold off on my top 5 that I was going to do for this episode. We went long. Do you still want to do your Showtime spotlight? We can cue that up real quick.
Yeah, we'll do that real quick here. It's not going to be long. I always try to keep the segment at about 1 to 3 minutes, but I feel like it's the right time because we just talked about getting out and hosting events. So I really want to highlight and thank everybody over the last 4.5 years who have hosted an event. Not even just the pro events, the regional events, the clubs events, the unique events like Potomac. Thank you guys so much for being so willing to create opportunities for people to come to your area, for locals to be able to get out and play competitively. Again, without you and us as someone who has hosted 5 major events plus 13 FlingGolf Fridays every summer and all that, just a huge shout out to everybody. I'm thankful for all that you do. I know the rest of the community is too. And we always thank our hosts, but I just wanted to really shed a little bit of extra light on them today because without you, all the numbers, everything we just talked about wouldn't matter if you weren't so willing to put the time in and make all of these events so good. And I know sometimes we rank events over events and we talk which one's more fun. The truth is they've all been fun. I've enjoyed them all, maybe with the exception of one. But it was still fun and to see everybody. You're laughing because you know which one I probably don't like. But it was still great because we were able to do different things and see another beautiful part of the country. But every event has been awesome, and all the hosts, you guys are incredible. Thank you so much. And again, please reach out if there's anything I can help you with to help you further more events in your area.
Yeah, very well said. Kudos to everybody who has hosted events. They all have had their special flair, and the more that we can build those events and really do some cool things, the better off we'll be. So we want to see where the future goes. We want this to be growing, productive, bright things ahead for the sport. And so we both definitely are here to help in any way that we can, with brainstorming ideas, with fundraising, with sponsorship, with anything that you can do to make the event successful in your area. We're both here to help on that, and definitely we'll kind of continue to talk about that and champion the people who are doing that. As we wrap things up here, we're just hitting the 1 hour mark. I want to just say real quick, follow us on Instagram. We don't post a ton over there, but we're building things up. We like to throw some clips and some content. I'll probably drop all of the graphics from the show on there as kind of a big breakdown of things for people to look at. So check out there. Also check out the World League FlingGolf stats site and worldleagueflinggolf.com. It's where you can get, the registration portal, schedules, all kind of updates, links to a ton of great stuff, plus the whole stats engine. So really just a ton of good stuff out there with the community that we're building right now. So we're excited to keep doing that, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in for what was a long episode, and we're going to break out a lot of clips from this one, I think, as well.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys jumping in. And again, thank you for being here, being supportive, listening to our podcast. We will continue to do this as long as you guys watch, listen, tune in, engage, and have fun with it. And again, just wanted to let everybody know, we're here to have fun. We want to talk about things that need to be talked about, or we feel that need to be talked about. And we just, we will both do a better job at making sure we paint what we want to say moving forward. So just wanted to close with that, but thank you guys, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, take care, everybody.